Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into how a team of scientists in Mexico took something as traditional as soil geography and turned it into an absolute digital empire. Now, soil science might not be the very first thing that pops into your head when you think of internet virality, but researchers at the National Autonomous University of Mexico managed to capture the incredibly elusive attention of Generation Z. So, how'd they pull it off? Well, they essentially reimagined scientific education for the 21st century.
Section 1. The Gen Z Learning Crisis. So to really get why this happened, we got to look at a massive clash going on in universities right now. It's a generational learning divide. We're facing a global learning crisis with dropping enrollments because, frankly, traditional methods just aren't resonating anymore. On one side, you have older professors who are taught using artisanal tools, like literally using styrofoam spheres to model complex chemical structures, or looking at old stereoscopic aerial photos. But on the flip side, today's Gen Z students, they expect scanning electron microscopes, high-res satellite imagery, and real-time drone data. You simply can't engage digital natives with old-school manual tools. To put that disconnect into perspective, get this. Young university students are spending anywhere from 3 to 8 hours every single day consuming digital content. But reading traditional textbooks, they're spending maybe 10 minutes to an hour on that. The takeaway here is that if the scientific community wants to reach these students, they literally have to meet them where they live, which is online.
Which brings us to Section 2, Soil Science Goes Viral.
Seeing this distracted student base and a noticeable lack of enthusiasm for soil sciences in Latin America, these researchers made a huge digital pivot. And it wasn't an overnight thing either. It was a strategic, multi-year campaign. Looking at this timeline, back in 2012, right as modern social media was blowing up, they launched a YouTube channel and a Facebook group. Then 2013 brought educational videos and a blog. During the pandemic, they laid the groundwork for a massive virtual museum platform that officially launched in 2021. And they're constantly innovating. They even have a Tips to Survive in Academia podcast slated for 2025.
The engagement they got is honestly staggering. They created a Facebook group with a pretty intense name: Edaphologists, Pedologists, Soil Scientists, Pedometricians, and Soil Lovers, and it's somehow pulled in over 15,000 active members worldwide. We're talking 35,000 monthly views, turning this into a massive, engaged global hub for soil science news.
Their YouTube channel absolutely exploded too. It racked up over 500,000 total views and more than 25,000 hours of watch time. But what's wild is what actually drove those views. It wasn't flashy entertainment clickbait, it was foundational educational content. Videos on core concepts like soil structure, moisture retention, and bulk density are sitting at over 40,000 views each. It's crazy to think about, right?
Let's move to Section 3, the Virtual Soil Museum. So, with all this sprawling content floating around, the team realized they needed a centralized hub. During the 2020 pandemic, they drafted a project that came to life in 2021 as a dedicated web platform. The Virtual Museum of Soil Geography of Mexico became a brilliant one-stop shop. It perfectly organizes over 340 YouTube videos and 325 academic blog posts. It acts as a repository for digital software and smartphone apps they've built, and it hosts comprehensive national soil maps. And so far, this platform has welcomed over 120,000 global visitors.
Now you might be wondering, what is their secret sauce? Well, it's actually how they structure the videos. They employ a really tight 4-step pedagogical approach for their scripts. First, define the concept. Second, explain exactly how to measure it. Third, teach the student how to interpret the results. And finally, show its real-world field application. It's highly logical, incredibly practical, and it hits exactly what Gen Z demands: realistic, connected learning.
As that video library ballooned into the hundreds, they organized the content into targeted podcast formats to make it way easier to digest. They've got everything from educational profiles like I Love the Soil to really deep scientific dives into heavy metals in the environment. They even threw in practical guides like Tips to Survive in Academia. And they have an ambitious series on soils, agriculture, and food coming in 2026.
Okay, Section 4, Apps and Hybrid Cartography.
Let's talk about how traditional fieldwork got completely modernized for the digital age. The cartography housed in this museum is cutting edge. We're not just looking at basic maps. They created digital geostatistical maps tracking heavy metals across 14 Mexican cities for public health. Even cooler, they developed some of the world's first hybrid maps, blending digital mapping with geopedological data, alongside ethnopedological maps that actually integrate traditional indigenous knowledge. And they didn't just leave all this data sitting on a website. They developed specialized smartphone apps to put it right into the pockets of students and agricultural producers. These apps provide geographic and taxonomic info across several Mexican states. But arguably the most fascinating innovation is a dedicated app specifically for Maya soil classification. It perfectly bridges the gap between ancient practical wisdom and 21st century mobile tech.
Next up, Section 5, the Living Classrooms Concept.
Now, here's where the story takes a really interesting turn. Despite this immense digital triumph, the creators came to a crucial realization. 100% virtual education simply isn't enough to truly master the earth sciences. To really understand the soil, you have to get your hands dirty. So they introduced the concept of living classrooms, or aulas vivas, sometimes called peasant schools. This is an educational strategy focused on teaching out in the real world, combining accessible high-tech tools with the grounded wisdom of local producers.
The researchers hit the nail on the head when they noted that you have to teach by seeing and doing. Contact with real ecosystems and the people actually working the land is completely irreplaceable. So students use these digital apps to conduct land evaluations and monitor key indicators right out there in the field. It is the ultimate hybrid of screen time and field time.
Which leads us to our final section, Section 6, the future of teaching. So, what does this whole story mean for the future of education, especially across disciplines dealing with this generational divide? Well, it means universities have to evolve into what they call mixed centers. A successful modern education model requires a perfect balance of three things: traditional classrooms and labs for foundational work, robust virtual environments like the Digital Museum, and finally, real-world living observatories to ground all that data back in physical reality.
Gen Z demands flexible, technologically advanced, and practically connected learning. The runaway success of Mexico's Virtual Museum of Soil Geography proves that when you respect how a new generation actually learns, they will show up, literally in the hundreds of thousands. So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Is your industry ready to adapt its teaching for the modern era, or are you still trying to explain the world using styrofoam spheres? Think about it. Thanks for joining me, and keep exploring.